The comment sat under a photo for maybe 20 minutes before anyone with a following screenshotted it. Latto had posted a set of pictures from the Okayyy rollout with Doja Cat, a Y2K glossed shoot, a black studded cutout swimsuit, the kind of image built specifically to be looked at and shared. 21 Savage looked at it, and instead of a heart or a flame emoji, he typed out a full sentence. "Can we have another one?" Their daughter was 2 months old at the time. By the time All Hip Hop and a dozen aggregator accounts had the story up, the comment had already stopped being about the two people who wrote it and become a referendum on everything the internet already believed about them. Some of that belief was affectionate, some of it wasn't. Almost none of it involved the couple actually saying anything for the record, which is, in itself, the most consistent fact about this relationship's public life. That's been the pattern with Latto and 21 Savage for close to 6 years now, and it's worth sitting with why, because the mechanics of this relationship's disclosures say more about how modern celebrity couples manage information than the relationship itself has ever directly revealed. Latto, born Alyssa Michelle Stevens in Columbus, Ohio, raised largely in Georgia, built her career on visibility. She came up on a reality show, The Rap Game, as a young teenager competing under a persona that leaned hard into shock, value, and confidence beyond her age. She went by Mulatto for most of her early run and didn't become Latto until 2021. A rebrand she said was partly about outrunning a name that kept getting turned into a weapon against her online, and partly about signaling a more grown, more controlled version of herself to an industry that had watched her since she was a teenager. The rebrand worked commercially. Big Energy broke her into the mainstream in 2022, an era-defining hit built on a Mariah Carey sample that put her in rotation far outside hip-hop circles. Her albums since then have had a harder time repeating that ceiling. Sugar, Honey Iced Tea, released in 2024, peaked at number 15 on the Billboard 200, respectable but not the follow-through some expected after a song as Big Energy. That commercial plateau matters here because it shaped how Big Mama got built and sold in 2026, not just as a pregnancy announcement, but as a comeback vehicle, stacked with high-profile features and timed to a life event with built-in emotional stakes no ordinary rollout could manufacture on its own. 21 Savage runs the opposite playbook, and he's had to. Born Shaya bin Abraham Joseph in Plaistow, London, and raised in Atlanta from early childhood, he spent 2019 in a very different kind of spotlight, detained by ICE for 9 days after SPA. It emerged he'd overstayed a childhood visa his family never formally corrected, a case that briefly turned a rap persona built on menace and detachment into a national conversation about immigration status, deportation, and who gets treated as American, regardless of how long they've lived here. He got out, kept working, and became one of the most reliably guarded interview subjects in mainstream hip-hop. He doesn't do the confessional Instagram live. He doesn't caption much, and when he does, the caption is usually a joke or a sports reference rather than anything personal. When he does say something publicly about his private life, it tends to land harder specifically because it's rare, which is exactly what happened with a comment as small as, "Can we have another one?" Put those two temperaments together and you get precisely the kind of relationship that generates 6 years of worst-kept secret headlines. Latto wants, or at minimum allows, visibility. 21 Savage doesn't. The compromise they landed on, whether either of them ever articulated it that way in an interview, was a relationship conducted almost entirely through implication. Matching tattoos noticed by fans with too much time on their hands. A dagger emoji that happened to match the one inked on his forehead. A hand resting on a belly in a music video, shot so the face stayed carefully out of frame. Even the jokes at their expense followed the same logic. At one point, another rapper, Lil Zay, posted an edited image mimicking Latto's own pregnancy announcement, captioning it as though he were the father, a bit that only worked because the real story had been withheld long enough for a parody to feel plausible. That style of half-confirmation isn't laziness or shyness dressed up as strategy. It's a specific kind of protection. Public figures who've watched partners get dragged through comment sections for months over a relationship they never asked to have narrated tend to learn that confirming nothing keeps the story finite. Once you say, yes, this is my girlfriend, on the record, the internet stops asking if and starts asking about everything else. The marriage status, the other children, the money, the timeline, who knew what and when. 21 Savage had particular reason to want that door closed a little longer. Latto's pregnancy made him a father of 4 before his relationship with her had ever been formally confirmed by either party. When Latto's pregnancy became impossible to deny in March 2026, Joseph didn't post outrage. She liked Latto's teaser video within hours of it going up. Fans read the gesture as a kind of blessing, or at least a non-aggression pact, and the absence of any visible friction between the two women became its own small story, treated by most outlets as evidence that whatever arrangement existed between 21 Savage, Joseph, and their children had already been worked out long before Latto's pregnancy went public. Nobody involved has laid out the specifics on the record, and that gap between what's visible and what's actually settled is where most of the speculation about this family has always lived. It hasn't fully closed even now. Latto's pregnancy announcement itself was constructed the way she constructs almost everything, as content with a release date attached. She'd gone quiet for a stretch, then dropped a short clip in March of herself in stilettos, bottle-feeding a baby cheetah, narrating in voiceover about taking baby steps before you run the game, about feeling every kick since she was a little girl dreaming of having her own. It read, correctly, as a pregnancy reveal wrapped inside an album announcement. The album was Big Mama, her 4th, which she told fans at the time would be her retirement project, a claim she'd walk back within weeks of the album actually dropping, telling Apple Music's Nadeska Alexis that postpartum depression had scrambled her sense of what she wanted permanent versus what she'd said in an emotional moment, that some days she still meant it, and some days she didn't. That reversal got far less circulation than the retirement claim itself, which is its own pattern in how this couple's story gets covered. The confident, quotable line travels fast and wide. The more complicated, quieter correction that follows mostly doesn't make it past the entertainment blogs that bothered to sit through the full interview. The music video for Business and Personal, Intra, the song that carried her pregnancy reveal, showed a hand cradling her bare belly while she rapped about a car seat and a kid on the way. The hand wasn't captioned. It didn't need to be. Fans matched the tattoos to 21 Savage's within hours of the video dropping. Days later, he reposted her Paper magazine pregnancy cover with the caption, Big Mama, not the little 1-inch and 3 dagger emojis, the same symbol tattooed on. Immediate question, not enough to open new ones. The Shade Room's repost of that comment drew thousands of replies within a day, most of them relieved rather than surprised, several noting that fans had effectively confirmed the relationship through matching tattoos and quiet cosigns long before either party said a word. Even the birth arrived through inference rather than statement. A baby shower months earlier had already tipped fans off. A viral clip showed 21 Savage at the party in a white tee, dagger-themed decor scattered around the room, and a man with matching tattoos standing beside Latto while her face stayed just out of frame. In May, Latto posted a rollout trailer for the album that ended on delivery room audio. No visuals, just monitors beeping and someone repeating, "Push! Go, go, go!" over and over layered against the date the album would drop. Days later, 21 Savage posted a carousel celebrating Arsenal's Premier League title. their first in 22 years. And buried in the middle of the photos was a newborn dressed in an arsenal. Inonsi, face out of frame. Nobody announced a name. Nobody announced a gender until Latto later rapped about having a daughter on the album itself, on an interlude called Daddy's Girl. The confirmation came through the music, not through a statement, which is consistent with how she's handled nearly every major life update since she started calling the album Big Mama. The record does the talking, her Instagram captions don't. What's notable is how much industry machinery moved around a relationship that produced almost no direct testimony from either party for months at a stretch. Big Mama arrived with 17 tracks and features from Jelly Roll, Doja Cat, Sexy Red, Glorilla, Mariah the Scientist, Teyana Taylor, Wizkid, O'Deal, and 21 Savage himself. A genuinely expensive rollout, released through Streamcut and RCA, built entirely on the emotional scaffolding of a pregnancy story. A separate viral clip from the same rollout period showed Latto declaring, in a voiceover, that she needed $1 million a show because she no longer wanted to leave the house once the baby arrived, a line that generated its own smaller wave of debate, with some fans calling it a boss move and others questioning whether a performer at her level could realistically command that number, a disagreement that was never resolved and mostly beside the point of what she was actually saying about wanting to stay home. The Breakfast Club interview that followed in June, where Latto finally spoke at length about the relationship, about hiding the pregnancy, about crying alone in Japan while pretending nothing was different, functioned less like a confession and more like the last scheduled beat of a rollout that had been building since March. By the time she was ready to talk in full, the story had already been told in fragments for 3 months, and the sit-down mostly confirmed what the fragments had already suggested. That's the frame the "another baby" comment landed inside 4 months later. It wasn't really new information, it was 21 Savage doing, in a comments section, what he'd been doing all along, saying just enough to be legible in a register.